looks good. And welcome to this episode, this special episode of The Dental Guys. I'm Wes, the Dental Guy.
And I'm John, the Dental Guy. And wow, another crazy week starts, Wes. And we just need more experts in our world right now.
We totally do. I mean, I'm done with the yard work today. I'm ready to hear. I mean,
that's all we got, man.
That's all we got. I mean, right
leaves,
now,
blowing grass, clipping.
So let me just tell you right now,
someone please employ me as a landscape architect.
It's happening right now. You know, whenever your wife is also a dental hygienist, John, you know what she does is she gets up in the morning and says, "Honey, can you get the pressure washer out? Because it's time for me to pressure wash the driveway." Because, you know, she's that person with the pressure washer in the office scraping the tartar off.
It's the closest she gets to an ultrasonic scaler,
It is,
basically.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, I can't blame her for wanting to clean something. Can't clean people's teeth. Might as well clean the sink, the stove. I mean, this is a time, man. I mean, I'm trying to find things to do. I caulked every square inch of my office the other day.
You sent me a picture of caulking. It's funny because I caulked the day before.
We got to be careful with this, right? But yeah, we've been I mean, it's things like this. It's like I'm running out of jobs to do. But really where we've been in the last week since we started broadcasting or podcasting about this has been trying to figure out what we're supposed to be doing. And it's been changing on a daily basis. And I feel like when all this congressional bill finally passed, then it was like that was just the beginning.
Signed into law on Saturday. And you know when my day started this morning, John? It was at 3:50 in the morning when I woke up thinking about the email that I'd received from my advisors. And I was typing an email to Chris Mahan and Justin Goodbread about where to go with all of this and kind of some summation things that we had kind of put into place over the weekend, some decision trees that had been
let me just give you like a little, like, you want to talk about waking up in a cold sweat. Yesterday so I'd been hearing, and we're going to get into this with Justin here in a minute, but I'd been hearing all week. And for those of you who are super nerds on this, I mean, we all kind of have become that. We've all become like trying to be experts if you can, because you're all worried about, well, where is essentially my income going to come from for the next couple of months? So many unknowns. And all week we've been hearing that, oh, this loan will be available and we'll be able to have it paid, and as long as you get it by this certain date. And then the Tennessee Dental Association, ADA, sends an email out yesterday. And it muddied the waters completely. It says, oh, the loan has to be funded. We'll get into this later, but the loan has to be completely spent and funded by June 30th was their understanding. And so I wake up at like 4 a.m. in a cold sweat, just like, well, who knows what's right? Do I know what's right? So
you were kind of like me, which is crazy because
I mean,
you don't really.
We're all struggling here trying to figure out what's right.
Really struggling.
And that's why we're here today, right, Wes? We're here.
John, what is up? We even wore the same freaking shirt.
You got the gray shirt memo. I don't know how this happened.
Do we have an expert for you guys? Okay, so he's been on our show before. Our show has been jam-packed over the last week or so with just different people all over the board here about what to do. But we kind of rely on two people, Chris Mahan, and today we have the second person that we rely on, Justin Goodbread, Financially Simple, and also Heritage Business Advisors. And so I'm super excited to bring Justin onto the show because he has been working. Let me just tell you right now, the guy traveled this weekend. Yeah, and he traveled safely, and he had to do some business travel, and he traveled safely. He avoided contact with people. And then over the weekend, I noticed he was working out in his yard, trying to blow off some steam. And he was working at the same time late into the night trying to figure all this stuff out, talking to the experts around the country. And that's why we want to bring Justin Goodbread into the conversation right now. Justin, welcome back to the show. This is it, man. We've been waiting for the CARES Act to be passed. First of all, welcome to the show. And boy, do we just need a recap, man. What is going on?
Help us to figure this out, Justin. Man, I mean, are you losing sleep on this at all? Is it just us?
I'm not losing sleep because at the end of the day, there's not much we can control. Let's be honest about that. And the other side of this is everything we're reading right now is subject to change. Okay. So we have two different things here. As we talked about last time, I'm a little bit of a nerd. I've spent a lot of hours actually reading the act with a highlighter in my hand, line by line, going through things. And now what we're hearing today is some of the guidance that banks are getting is nowhere inside the bill. So if you want to do another episode tomorrow, it'll change again, but we can kind of go over what we know.
So what do we know today? What do we know today? Because last week, all we knew was like, if you go back 1 week, all we knew was cash is king. Try to defer your loans as best you can. Try to, do everything you can to essentially have a cushion built up. And then we were just kind of barely talking about the fact that, there was a question, should we keep our teams on, our staff in place? Should we let them go? Should we let them off? And then really we didn't know what these benefits would even look like. So kind of like, let's start with what should we be thinking about today? And then what are some of the knowns and unknowns for the next maybe month or two, or whatever time frame you can kind of help us with?
So I think the easiest way for me to answer that would be an email that our team sent out to our clients today. And for sake of disclosure, like I always have to do because of the information that we share, this is not advice, friends. This is educational purposes only. My challenge to you is to go out and speak to your professional advisors, your CPA, your attorneys, your CFPs. If you don't have one, reach out to us. We're helping people all over the place right now with this particular issue. So we sent out an email just a few minutes ago from the advisory side that, and I'll read these 4 points, John, if I may, and then we'll unpack it, okay, throughout the conversation today, because I think we have to dig into the loans as the 7A and the 7B in order to understand what decisions we need to make today. So if I may, just a little bit of latitude here on time-wise, we're looking at from a recommendation to our clients today, and I'll read you word for word. Here we go. Quote, if you're a business owner experiencing a complete loss in business income, i.e. dentist, chiropractor, optometrist, entrepreneur, doctor, consider laying off all employees by the end of business tomorrow. That's number one right there. I know we're going to spend some time talking about that, but that's like number one, like shot across the bow. Then we went on to say, if you are a business owner looking into the future, and you realize that your current employee payroll need to be reduced, then you may want to look at lowering your employee count now. And here's 4 reasons. Number one, the fact that we now have guidance that this shelter in place could continue all the way up to April 30th, as of even last night from our president. Number 2 is the SBA administration in their Loan 7A has been clarifying various statements talking about the terminated dates of employees. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. We also are dealing with the uncertainty of revenue. I mean, look at y'all business right now. I mean, we're looking at perhaps another 4 weeks before we even have revenue come back into play. So that's an issue. And then you've got to communicate some solidity, some points to your employees. They're just as confused as the business owner is at this particular point. So even though it's not the best news to lay somebody off, with the new CARES Act and some of the things that came through on that, they're going to get a reasonable income now, and that's better than them being in limbo. So right off the bat, our first point was number one, to lay your employees off. Number 2, 3, and 4 came about right after that was you may consider applying for the SBA 7B loan. Then you may want to apply for the 7A loan, and we'll talk about how you do that through your lending institution. And then, John, the same thing that we spoke about last week is cash is king. You're still holding cash. You're still deferring as many payments as you can through rents, through mortgages, through car payments, through all those various things that we look at in order to minimize cash flow. I mean, you guys and gals who are in the entrepreneur, doctor, dentist profession at this point are in a position now you want to reserve cash and just get by these next 4, maybe 5, maybe 6, heaven forbid if it's another 8 weeks.
So let's talk about, because you kind of gave us a good overview there. So first off, like we said, we still want to preserve cash. We still want to preserve capital, but let's talk about some of these terms, the 7A and 7B, because, my limited understanding here is that we've got loans that are available right now that you can apply for. And that's one of those 2. So I'll let you specify. And then we've also got a loan that's kind of the big dog that's not available yet, but it's coming online. And that's the one that's really going to be the one that's going to make a difference long-term. But kind of unpack for us, like assuming that we've laid off our team, which I had the pleasure of doing today. That was
can I tell us something about
Man.
that? I mean, that's so hard, right? Because this has never happened in my existence as a business to do something like this. I called one of my employees and hired her and fired her in the same conversation, so that she could capitalize on unemployment. And it's just unbelievable, what we're having to do, John. It's unreal.
Some of these discussions that you really can't be prepared for. There is no good way to prepare for it. But so let's assume you have laid off or are going to lay off your staff in order to take advantage of really the very good benefits that they're going to get during that time. So it's really, for them, it's going to be a better situation, and for us. So
Yeah.
what are some of the first things you should be doing with these loans, and how do they work, and what should we be thinking about, today and in the coming weeks with those?
So let's unpack them before I can answer the details of those questions. And the very first disclosure I'm going to tell you folks is that the guidance on these loans as they are defined today are changing as rapidly as they are evolving. So I've spent the better half of the afternoon talking with two bank treasurers and my personal banker and several SBA who's who, and then okay, in the SBA world. And what they're saying is, Justin, we have some problems. We have some problems that they're trying to figure out. We have some problems on some guidelines, which is why inside the act, the actual CARES Act, it gives the SBA latitude to have 15 days before they have to roll out the behemoth, the 7A portion. So let me unpack these two loans before we dive into some of those latter questions there, John, if I may. So what we refer to as 7B, or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, has a loan that's been around for a while now. It's nothing new. In Tennessee, here in East Tennessee, about a month ago now, we had a tornado hit eastern Nashville, almost northeastern Nashville. And the SBA loan, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, as we say, EIDL, it was there in place for a business owner who may have lost a store, may have lost a particular franchise during that time period. So they could come in and give them some lending to help restructure and rebuild really fast. So it's not a new loan. What's changing is Section 1110 of the new bill, the CARES Act, which changes some of the language around on us. So for us dentists, as we're speaking to here today, most people are going to fall into this particular loan because you're under 500 employees. Now, one of the things that you have to do is you have to qualify for a substantial economic injury, means that your business cannot meet its obligations or pay normal operating expenses. In addition to that, there's some questions right now on the guidance on how much they're going to lend under this particular 7B loan. They can go up to $2 million, which is a higher number than normal. And there's several different rules that you can read. Part of it says up to half of the 1 year's gross profits, not to exceed $500,000, which about 95% of the loans historically have performed there. If you use an EIDL loan, guys, you can use it to pay your fixed debt payments, your payroll, your accounts payable, and other bills that you haven't been able to pay. The reason why it's getting traction, in fact, I read this in the ADA's information, I read this in the TDA's, I read this in the Minnesota Dental Association, is that this particular one gives a grant. This particular 7B gives a grant for $10,000 in an emergency advance. So basically what they're saying is you apply for the 7B, within 3 to 5 business days is when they want to have this money to you, even before your loan is approved or denied. So it's a $10,000 grant that you can use. They specifically state inside the law that the act addresses the applicant may receive this advance while still applying for Section 7A. So typically, in fact, I was talking with an SBA banker today, said, Justin, we have people that are applying for 7B, but whenever we're getting ready to run 7As through, we're getting some kickback from the SBA. They've got some system problems they're having to shore up at this point because it wasn't designed to run 2 loans simultaneously. So it does say in the act, though, we can apply for 7B, and at the same time, while still applying for 7A, we can receive the advance.
Okay, so you're saying that this is a $10,000 amount that is a grant. So that means that if we were wanting fast cash now,
yep,
that this would be the way to do that. And it's a grant, meaning that this money is forgivable, or they just give it to you, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the act says that, first of all, it's $10,000 in emergency advance, and you're getting it within 3 days of submitting the application.
3 days.
Now, there's a lot of stuff you got to fill out. It's not like, hey, give me 10 grand, I'm going to take it and go do something with. It's not that. You actually have a lot of criteria that you have to submit in the B loan. But it does not require it to be repaid. Okay, it does not require this particular position to be repaid. Where it's going to get interesting, John, is this. We're going to get to the 7A in a second. Okay. That's where I want to participate in. I know that's where a lot of our docs want to participate in. If you get the $10,000 in 7B, then what happens is, and I quote, your advance will reduce from the loan forgiveness for the loan of payroll costs. So I'm going to read that again. Will be reduced from the loan forgiveness amount for a loan for payroll cost. What it's talking about there is on 7A, if you get 7B and get 10 grand now, and you do also get the 7A position, which we're going to go in detail over, if you get both of those, then you're going to reduce the forgiveness amount of 7A, which means that you're going to have a $10,000 payback on that side of the table. So think of a checker, or a quarter, heads, tails. If you get money on the head side, you're going to have to pay it back on the tail side. That's kind of how that
But if you need it soon, though, this is the way to get it soon. So because this 7A loan, which we'll talk more about, you can't get access to that right now. So if you need cash now with a 3-day turnaround, you can get $10,000, but just be aware that that will be subtracted from the amount that's forgiven for the 7A. Is that right?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
And John, well, one of the things we're looking at on a case-by-case basis with our banking partners is we have several dentists that candidly we're not going to apply for 7A on. We're going to use all 7B, and here's why. On 7B, there's an interest rate at 3.75% with a duration, a long term, up to 30 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So whereas 7A is a 10-year term, on this one it's a 30-year term. So we do have some practitioners. Think about this. Imagine if you were a dentist over in Cookeville who just lost the practice in the tornado and this hits. You've got a double whammy on your plate. So I was making a statement today that things could always be worse. And you're saying, Justin, there's no way. Yeah, you could. You could be one of those dentists who lost their practice in Cookeville, Tennessee from that tornado right before this thing hit. So in that particular case, we are looking at the 7B only because it's a 3.75 interest rate up to 30 years. A waive of personal guarantee. So they're removing the personal guarantee and they're removing the demonstration that you're unable to obtain credit from another source, which is really popular for the 7B loan. Then it can delay principal and interest. So 7B is an interesting loan in the fact that you have a grant that you can get, $10,000, plus there's also the emergency lending that is at 3.75 for 30 years. So I hear the need to go to 7A and I want to participate in the 7A, but you may be in a position where 7B fits you 100% and you don't need 7A at this point.
But let me ask maybe a practical question on that. So if you are, I'm going to super generalize here. So forgive me if you don't, agree with my generalization, but let's generalize here that many dentists, at least from what we're hearing, they're not in that disaster situation from a standpoint of just losing their practice, and they're operating their practice, they've been going along fine, and they have maybe 2 or 3 weeks of operating expenses that was a reserve, which I'm hearing a lot of. So you got 2 or 3 weeks of reserves, and maybe that means you've got I don't know $40,000-$50,000 in the bank for your business, and now there's a question about how quickly can you get that 7A loan. What I'm hearing from you is you might want to apply for this 7B because you're going to get potentially $10,000 cash infusion within 3 days. So is that the kind of practice that you're going to be just recommending taking out that minimum of 10,000 if somebody's looking for cash right now and is kind of maybe feeling the burn, or maybe they don't have a line of credit or something like that?
Possibly, yes, that's a good opportunity. I think because we can go on the 7A side, John, and we can actually go above the lending amount based on the calculation as well. So it depends on each individual case. All right. So
good point.
I think you just outlined, but I think you just outlined a very good generalization, but let me kind of step it down a little bit more. On section 7B, there's no fee to apply and there's no obligation to accept the funds. So you can go in and push an application. You can't set necessarily the amount of money they're willing to loan you on that position. You could apply, you could get your $10,000 grant, and they could come back and say, hey, you don't qualify for us over here. Great. Or they may come back and say, hey, you know what? You can get $500,000 at 3.75% interest for 30 years. You can bet your sweet bippy I'd jump over that. I'm a business owner every day of the week. to get that much money, be able to make it work. So my point is you want to apply, get your 10 grand, but then realize that there's no obligation, there's no fee. The goal is to process the application in 3 to 5 days, which is what they're saying to get the 10 grand. That's the goal. Who knows? Yeah. We've all seen the movement of the government, right? And then the funds candidly aren't available for roughly 30 days plus. So this isn't like I'm going to run out and get a lot of money real quick. That's not the position. So which is where I go back to our last conversation the other day. Cash is king. Use credit cards, use lines of credit, contact your bank and see if I don't have a line of credit, see if you can get one. They're still issuing those if you have a great relationship. So you still want to make those applications in those particular points. Okay.
That helps. That's a lot. Man, that's a lot on just that one.
Well, let's dive into the behemoth, okay? Because 7B is one system, 7A. All right. So here's what they call it. It's called the Paycheck Protection position. $350 billion of the CARES Act was appropriated to this particular loan. Think about it. $350 billion with a B, friends. Okay. Ridiculous amounts of money. Basically, it's there to protect the paychecks of America's workforce. Now, keep in mind, Marco Rubio said that roughly small business owners, 30 million of us, support roughly 60% of the population. So if you run the math on it, friends, there's not enough money for go around. It just doesn't work. But let's deal with how can we become eligible for this particular loan, the 7A loan, which is what we're going to call the payroll protection loan. You had to be in operation with your business on February 15th or before. You had to have employees, okay, who you were paying salaries, payroll taxes, etc., before February 15th, or you were an independent contractor. So I want you to think about this. This is a play here for some of you docs who are a W-2 at one location, and now you're a 1099 at another location. You're an independent contractor. You now can apply for this particular position, particular 7A loan, even though you don't have employees at this particular point. So it is a broad-based loan. It's not just for John and Wes who have team members involved. This could also be for 1099 positions. You also, in order to be eligible, you had to be substantially impacted. Dentist, you guys were substantially impacted. Okay, you're gonna have to sign a good faith estimate, basically saying that good faith certification saying that we have been substantially impacted, but you're not gonna have to prove you can repay the funds. Well, that's interesting to me. You're not gonna have to prove that. There's a lot of technical language basically saying what I just said. I can read the quotes, but it doesn't matter. Here's what matters. How much can we get? Okay. The calculation goes like this, friends. It's 2.5 times your average monthly cost, your average monthly payroll costs for those less than $100,000. I'm going to explain that caveat. Based on the prior year's payroll cost, up to $10 million. Okay. So first of all, we got to dissect what is payroll cost. Well, payroll cost is salary, wages, commissions, similar compensation. It could be vacation time, parental sick times if you're tracking that through your payroll provider. It can be the cost for your group health benefits, including the premiums. Think about that, including the premiums for group health benefits. There's a question as to what is in this 1 point payment of any retirement benefits. I've heard a CPA say today for business owners, that could be the safe harbor match. I've heard that could be the cost balance particular position match on that. I've heard others say, the lawyers say, well, no, it's talking about payments you actually receive from the particular position. I think we're going to get some guidance on that 1 point. But a payroll also includes your state and local compensation, your state and local tax compensation. So here's where it gets kind of interesting here, friends. And this is where we're going to come to some practicalities here in a second. But the rule says it's two and a half times the average monthly amount from 1 year period, for the 1 year period before the date on which the loan is made. Okay. So John and Wes, this is where it's going to get a little technical, but if you think from a planning perspective, as I know both of you guys do, we can't get the money quite yet. We can apply for it, but it's not even available to us today. The SBA still has 15 days to be able to deal with this, right? But let's say, just for hypothetical circumstances, that we had it in our possession effective April 1st. And now we had this money that we just qualified for 2.5 times our average monthly payroll, including ourselves, which I'm going to explain that in just a second. But now we're not in business. We can't work for the next 4 weeks. That's a major circumstantial issue that we have. The reason for that is this particular portion of money is forgivable, and we're going to cover what makes it forgivable. My challenge to you at this point, docs, is this. Don't run out and apply for it quite yet, or don't take the money quite yet. Now, I've had lots of bankers say, Justin, go apply now, and let's just get the money now. That may be a position. It's one that you may take. I've had a lot of attorneys say, don't apply yet, because if you get the money now and you have 4 weeks before you're not working, you're not going to get that particular portion forgiven. Okay. So
you can only get it forgiven if you have employees that you're paying payroll to, right?
Yeah, we're going to cover that in detail, but I want you to stick that as a nugget in your hat, because I'm going to dive down. I got to kind of teach you, and we got to dive down a little bit deeper here. But one of the things I want to make sure you realize is that $100,000 number. So let's give an assumption here, okay? Let's say that my payroll, I'm a dentist, my payroll average per month is $50,000 a month. Let's just say that's my average number, okay? But let's say I'm a dentist and I'm pulling in $300,000 a year, like so many of our dentists are, in revenue that we work with plus. Well, the rule says you're only eligible to count your benefit up to $100,000, which means that you take your $50,000 average payroll plus 8,333, that's 100,000 divided by 12, friends, times 2.5. It means that my Section 7A benefit, or my loan, is $145,000, $145,833 to be exact. Okay. So here is where the detail is that has been clarified for us today. The loan calculation, the loan amount, is solely based on payroll cost. The loan forgiveness is based on a litany of things. Okay, so let me say it one more time. The loan calculation is based on the payroll cost. The loan forgiveness is based on a number of different details. Is that making sense so far?
Yep.
I'm sorry. I've been talking all day, but I'm losing my voice this late in the evening. I just pray I don't have coronavirus, guys. I promise I used wipes the entire time on my trip.
Hey, we need a nasal
week.
swab stat.
Exactly.
Nasal swab stat.
And we even did the elbow fist bump, right? Whenever I was doing the video for television.
That's awesome.
Okay. What can you use a loan for? So here's where the forgiveness comes in. You can use it to pay payroll. That's the idea behind it. You can use it to pay your medical insurance premiums and the benefits. You can use it to pay salaries. Get this. You can use it to pay the interest on your mortgage payment. So some people own their building. You can use it to pay the interest portion, which means we're going to need our amortization table when we have to deal with this in the future. Or if you're renting your place, you can use it to pay your rent, your utilities. And this is where it's big for a lot of our docs. As you bought a practice note, you can use it to pay other debt obligations that were incurred before the covered period. So if you have a practice note that you owe $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 on, that you had before the covered period, so before February 15th, okay, but when you entered into this, you now can use this 2.5%, this $148,000 in my example earlier, to cover payroll, rent, interest, utilities, things of that nature. So you can use it to cover a lot of things. And as long as you use it for those numbers, you've got a forgiveness in place. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's huge. So you have to, number one, understand what kind of benefits you're actually going to get is all dependent on your payroll amount. You're limited to $100,000 of total compensation in that calculation per doctor. So that would be if you had like an associate, say, that was making $150,000 or whatever. You can only count 100,000 of that, and then 100,000 of your own income. And then we have to understand what that's actually going to help us with. Now, so that all sounds great, because that's going to be what's going to jumpstart our practices. So a couple of questions I think people have got is, well, when is this going to be available, and what's the process going to look and like? And the big question I keep hearing is, when is the best time to get this loan? Is it as soon as it's available, or should we wait it out? What about those kinds of things?
I think we need to address one more loan forgiveness issue first, John. Then I think we can dive into that. Okay. There was some clarification that came on Sunday that's vital to what we talked about and what you guys dealt with today. Okay. And here's what it said. Borrowers that rehire workers previously laid off from February 15th through April 1st shall not have those numbers counted against them during any such period for loan forgiveness purposes, so long as they are rehired by June the 30th.
Oh, that's
the reason
major.
why that is major. And the reason why that's in there is because there was a rule that states in the law and that was passed that said forgiveness will be reduced proportionally by any reduction in employees retained compared to either. So whenever you were terminating these employees so you could survive, so they could go on unemployment and get now this new boistered unemployment benefit, you would be penalized ultimately if you let employees go in and did not rehire them. In fact, Chris Mahan and I did a podcast together. One of the two we did that we actually talked about that strategy. Man, we may have to turn around and rehire our employees by April 1st. Well, then that particular type of guidance came out that now we were able to say, hey, look, it's time to go out and lay your employees off so that we can keep the practices sustainable. So I want to put that in there at this point in loan forgiveness on why you guys dealt with what you did today. And in fact, I was even part of y'all's conversation with Chris or your advisors in that, but that's what we were reading. And that was the guidance given from several law firms and from the SBA. It's my understanding. I haven't seen the SBA notice on that, but that's my understanding. So that's a huge point there. Okay?
So that doesn't mean so that means we don't have to keep our team on the payroll, because that's been a major, I still keep seeing this question coming up in Facebook groups and things. People are saying, well, do I have to keep people employed? Am I going to be penalized? So you're saying, again, just to clarify, if you lay everybody off in order to preserve cash and get them on this unemployment benefit that's kind of supercharged right now, as long as those are rehired, then you can still get this loan and have the full benefit of it as far as forgiveness.
That's my complete understanding at this time, John, with, again, enough so that we were able to communicate to our clients that, hey, you may want to consider this. Call us with your specific issues, okay, or your particular specific situation. Again, that's not investment advice. That's not advice for you to go out and fire everybody and then turn around and say, hey, Justin told me that's not it. My point is to be aware that it's out there and there's some guidance that's been given that you need to speak with your professional advisors on to make the best decisions for your practice and for your team. I'm going to go back to an illustration I've given. I don't know if I gave it on your podcast, guys, but whenever we get on the airplane, the next time we all want to fly on the airplane, the flight attendant's going to tell us to put our oxygen mask on ourselves before we put on our kids. What you're doing, in effect, by eliminating the risk or the cost of your team members at this particular point, is you're giving yourself an option, number one. Number two, you're giving your practice an option of survival. So many docs I know, even though that they could continue to pay their team members, it just doesn't make wise business decisions or wise business sense while you're shut down for at least another 4 weeks, maybe another 5 or 6, 7 weeks. Who knows at this point? So I say that the reason why we're doing that is because of some guidance that we received over the weekend.